What if the pain you feel isn't from the world, but from the parts of yourself you've buried? Carl Jung revealed that our deepest wounds are mirrors of our unconscious, those forgotten traumas and fears we refuse to face. When someone's words sting, it's not their voice you hear, but your own hidden resistance echoing back. True strength isn't about shielding yourself. It's about uncovering what was already broken within. This is the path to becoming unshakable. Today we'll explore how awareness, not armor, is the key to inner immunity. Let's begin, shall we? Have you ever wondered why certain criticisms cut deeper than others? A coworker's offhand remark about your work ethic might linger for days, while a stranger's harsh words barely register. This isn't random, it's a signal. The pain you feel isn't just about what you said, but about what already existed within you. Jung called this phenomenon rejection. We unconsciously recognize our own unhealed wounds in others, and that's why their words or actions trigger disproportionate reactions. The more we try to avoid these painful triggers, the more power they hold over us. Think of it like a splinter left untreated. Ignoring it doesn't make it disappear, it only ensures the wound festers beneath the surface. Studies in emotional psychology show that suppressed emotions don't vanish. They resurface in other ways. Sudden outbursts, chronic anxiety, or even physical symptoms. For example, someone who was shamed for expressing anger as a child might now freeze when confronted, not because the situation warrants fear, but because their nervous system is replaying an old script. These reactions often trace back to early experiences we've forgotten or dismissed as insignificant. A parent's constant criticism might wire a child's brain to equate mistakes with failure. So, decades later, a simple suggestion from a partner feels like an attack. The brain doesn't distinguish between past and present threats. It reacts to patterns. This is why two people can face the same criticism, and one walks away unaffected, while the other spirals. The difference isn't the external event, it's the internal landscape each person carries. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to disarming them. When you notice a strong emotional reaction, pause and ask, "What does this remind me of?" The answer might surprise you. That colleague's comment about your presentation could echo a teacher who once humiliated you in front of classmates. The key isn't to blame the past, but to separate it from the present, to see that your reaction is an old survival mechanism that no longer serves you. This isn't about assigning fault, it's about reclaiming agency. Every time you identify a trigger's origin, you weaken its grip. Research on neuroplasticity confirms that awareness alone begins rewiring the brain. The moment you observe a pattern, you're no longer trapped by it. The goal isn't to eliminate pain, but to understand it. Because once you do, you'll realize the criticism was never about them. It was always about you. And that means the power to change it was yours all along. Now, consider this. If pain is a mirror, what happens when we stop fearing the reflection? Why do we believe that changing others will heal our pain? We often think if we could just make someone apologize, or if circumstances were different, our suffering would end. But this belief creates a paradox. The more we try to control external events, the less control we actually have. Research shows that people who tie their emotional stability to outcomes beyond their influence report higher levels of chronic stress. The need to control is often a disguised attempt to avoid facing what's unsettled within us. Consider how many arguments start because someone didn't behave the way we expected. A partner forgets an anniversary, a friend cancels plans. These events trigger frustration, not because of what happened, but because they conflict with our internal script for how things should be. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort we feel when reality doesn't match our expectations. The brain responds by either rejecting the reality or doubling down on efforts to force alignment, neither of which brings lasting peace. Jung observed that attempts to control external circumstances are projections of our resistance to inner work. If you resent someone for being irresponsible, ask yourself, where have you denied your own need for rest? If a colleague's arrogance bothers you, examine where you suppress your own confidence. Studies on mirror neurons suggest we criticize most harshly in others what we disown in ourselves. This isn't to say toxic behavior should be excused, but to highlight that our reactions reveal unfinished internal dialogues. The illusion of control is exhausting. Think of it like holding a beach ball underwater. It takes constant effort, and the moment you stop, it resurfaces. People who invest energy in changing others often report feeling drained yet strangely powerless. A 2022 study on workplace dynamics found that employees who focused on altering colleagues' behavior experienced 37% higher burnout rates than those who adapted their own responses. External control is temporary. Internal awareness creates lasting change. Letting go doesn't mean passivity. It means redirecting energy from futile battles to fertile ground, your own perceptions. When you stop demanding that life conform to your expectations, you gain access to a deeper resilience. For example, instead of resenting a critical parent, you might explore why their approval still matters. That shift from external blame to internal inquiry is where real power begins. Cognitive behavioral therapy research confirms that people who practice this reframing experience faster emotional recovery after conflicts. This isn't about blaming yourself for reactions, but about recognizing that their intensity points to something unresolved within you. The next time you feel the urge to control a situation, pause, ask, what am I trying to avoid feeling? The answer might reveal a fear of inadequacy, a buried shame, or an old wound seeking closure. Awareness dissolves the illusion that happiness depends on others' actions. Freedom starts when you realize no one else holds the keys to your peace. They never did. Now, consider what happens when you stop wrestling with reflections and turn toward the source. What if the parts of yourself you reject hold the key to your strength? Carl Jung called these disowned aspects the shadow, the collection of traits, desires, and emotions we deny in ourselves, but often criticize in others. Think of the coworker whose laziness irritates you, or the friend whose neediness makes you uncomfortable. These reactions aren't coincidences. They're clues pointing to qualities you've exiled from your own self-image. The shadow isn't just darkness, it's untapped potential. That anger you suppress might contain necessary boundaries. The vulnerability you hide could be the gateway to deeper connections. Repressed emotions don't disappear, they resurface in unexpected ways. Sudden outbursts, passive-aggressive comments, or even physical symptoms like insomnia or tension headaches. Studies show that people who consistently avoid confronting difficult emotions are 3 times more likely to develop anxiety disorders. The shadow operates like a hidden scriptwriter, influencing decisions you think are rational. For example, someone who prides themselves on independence might unconsciously sabotage relationships to avoid admitting they crave closeness. Or a perfectionist might procrastinate, not because they're lazy, but because they fear their best efforts won't be flawless. Facing the shadow isn't about self-condemnation. It's about reclaiming lost parts of yourself. Jung believed suffering arises when one part of the self seeks growth, while another resists change. Imagine treating your pain like a messenger rather than an enemy. As Jung suggested, when depression knocks, you might invite her to sit down, offer her a coffee, and listen to what she has to say. This shift from resistance to curiosity changes everything. That jealousy you feel toward a successful colleague, it might reveal ambitions you've dismissed as unrealistic. The resentment toward a demanding parent, it could highlight needs for autonomy you've never voiced. Integration begins with simple observation. Next time you have a strong reaction to someone, ask, what does this say about me? If a partner's forgetfulness triggers rage, explore where you've neglected your own needs. If a friend's confidence stirs envy, examine where you dim your light to avoid judgment. Research on emotional processing shows that naming repressed feelings reduces their intensity by up to 50%. The goal isn't to act on every impulse, but to acknowledge their existence. A person who accepts their capacity for selfishness becomes more generous, not less, because their kindness is now a choice, not a performance. This work has a ripple effect. As you stop projecting your shadow onto others, relationships transform. Conflicts that once seemed personal now reveal shared human struggles. A study on conflict resolution found that couples who practice shadow work reported 40% fewer recurring arguments. They stopped seeing each other as adversaries and recognized how both were grappling with unmet needs. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that remembers what you've forgotten. Your full humanity. Every trait you reject holds energy waiting to be redirected. Aggression channeled becomes assertiveness. Neediness understood becomes empathy. What looks like weakness is often strength in disguise. The things you're ashamed of, they're the raw materials of your wholeness. Now, consider this. If your pain is a language, what is it trying to say? The answer might surprise you, not because it's foreign, but because it's been silenced for so long. If this message is resonating with you, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more insights like this. How does facing your pain lead to becoming who you truly are? Jung called this process individuation, not the pursuit of perfection, but the hard-earned integration of every part of yourself. It's what happens when you stop running from what hurts and start listening to what it's trying to show you. This isn't about becoming someone new, but uncovering who you've always been beneath the layers of expectation and avoidance. The path is solitary, not because you're meant to be alone, but because no one else can do this work for you. The first stage often feels like disintegration. Old identities crumble. The people pleaser, the overachiever, the perpetual victim. Roles you adopted to survive, but that no longer fit. Research on identity shift shows this phase triggers brain activity, similar to physical pain, which explains why growth often feels like loss. You might notice old friends drifting away, not because you've changed for the worse, but because your authenticity reflects back the masks they're still wearing. Jung warned that individuation doesn't offer comfort or guarantees. It asks you to trade the illusion of control for something far more durable, self-knowledge. Midway through the journey comes the confrontation with your shadow. This is where most turn back. That colleague's criticism stings because it mirrors your own self-doubt. A partner's withdrawal terrifies you because it echoes your fear of abandonment. Studies on emotional processing reveal that naming these patterns reduces their power by half. Integration isn't about eliminating these parts, but recognizing they're fragments of a larger whole. Your temper, when channeled, becomes boundaries. Your neediness, understood, transforms into compassion. The final stage isn't an endpoint, but a new way of being. You'll notice reactions that once felt automatic now have space between stimulus and response. A 2023 neuroscience study found that people practicing self-awareness exercises developed thicker prefrontal cortices, the brain region responsible for emotional regulation. This is the practical result of individuation, not invulnerability, but the ability to choose how you engage with pain. You'll still feel anger, but it won't control you. Rejection will hurt, but it won't define you. This path demands courage, not because the destination is uncertain, but because the route requires surrendering every crutch you've leaned on. Your ego will resist. It prefers the familiar prison of old stories to the discomfort of freedom. But something unexpected happens when you persist. The qualities you once hid become sources of strength. The past loses its grip. You realize the world's judgments were never about you, but about the projections others placed on you. Individuation isn't about becoming special. It's about becoming whole. Jung said it clearly. You do not need to become a better person. You just need to become complete. The irony is that by embracing your contradictions, your strength and fragility, your wisdom and naivete, you develop a resilience no external force can shake. Not because you're armored, but because you are finally, undeniably, yourself. Now, consider what's possible when you stop fearing the depths and start trusting your capacity to navigate them. The answer isn't found in theories or scripts, but in the quiet moments when you choose honesty over comfort, curiosity over certainty. That's where transformation lives. Becoming unshakable isn't about avoiding pain, it's about understanding it. Every trigger reveals a part of you asking to be seen, and Jung said, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. So, when something stings, pause and ask, what is this really touching in me? True strength begins with honest reflection. Now, it's your turn. What part of this message hit home for you? Share it in the comments. Your story might help someone else heal.